Recorded live at the center of the earth. This is Robots from Tomorrow.
Robots from Tomorrow. My name is Greg. Thanks for being here. If you're joining us for the first time and dig what we do here on the show today, you can follow us in a number of ways. RobotsFromTomorrow.com is our website and the only place you can find all 803 of our prior episodes categorized and absolutely free. We have a YouTube channel with videos of our current episodes and a growing number of episodes from our back catalog. And if you want to experience the show in its natural habitat, the only place to do that is, of course, multiversitycomics.com. Multiversitycomics.com is still one of the best ways to stay informed about the wide world of comics. The site is updated multiple times throughout the day with all manner of news, reviews, interviews, other podcasts like DC3Cast, Made by Multiversity, and much more. There's a pretty good chance every time you go to multiversitycomics.com, you'll find something new. Earlier this month, I talked about the early days of 2000 AD, and so I thought it would be fun to chat with someone who has a strip currently running in the Progs right now. Starting with Prog 2367 is Book 2 of the strip Full Tilt Boogie, the continuing adventures of teen bounty hunter T, her grandmother, and their cat as they crisscross the galaxy. Drawn by Eduardo Ocana, colored by Eva de la Cruz, lettered by Annie Parkhouse, and written by today's guest. She is a multi-hyphenate creator whose CV would take the entire show to lay out in detail, so with her indulgence, I will paraphrase. A writer of prose, comics, poetry, film, and television, she is also a director, a collaborator, and obviously a multitasker of the highest order. She's mashed up the Archie gang with the Predator, worked with Duncan Jones, and edited an anthology of soldiers' autobiographical stories about their deployments. While not afraid to roll up her sleeves and do all manner of creative jobs herself, her eye for collaboration has led her to working with such talents as Carla Speed McNeil on No Mercy, and Erica Henderson on the pulp horror graphic novella Dracula Motherfer Keer, and the more recent Parasocial, as well as the aforementioned Ocana, even prior to Full Tilt Boogie. I'm going to try my best to keep this conversation coherent, but there's so many avenues for questions I make no promises on this end, because today's guest is Alex Campi, and I'm thrilled to finally have her on the show to talk about her work with 2000 AD and more. Alex, how you doing?
Hi, Greg. I'm good.
Good. So you are usually mentioned as one of the first Americans to work for Tharg, to write for the Progs. But you have a history of the comic before your name started appearing in it. When did 2000 AD pop up on your radar?
Gosh, I mean, I don't know whether I fully count as one of the first Americans, given that I actually have a British passport and lived in the UK for 12 years. But that was when I first got into 2000 AD. I read comics growing up, was a big fan of the Claremont's X-Men, got them at spinner racks in a local mall comic shop. All of these things are gone. Discovered boys and rock and roll and kind of left comics for a while. Still love my Flaming Carrot. And then when I was in the UK, my husband at the time was moving into Wellington Barracks, which is the barracks on Birdcage Walk right in the middle of London, where the ceremonial troops basically are posted for the changing of the guard and et cetera, et cetera. And one of his friends was moving out of Wellyby and turned to me, apropos nothing at all, and said, "You look like the sort of person who would like comics. I've got a box of 2000 ADs and Vertigo comics. Do you want them?" And I'm like, one, how dare? Two, yes. And so that's got me back into comics, reading 2000 AD, which was, what was running at the time. Durham Red, Simon Fraser, and Robbie Morrison, who's gone into great Hollywood success. There is Nikolai Dante, Dread, Sinister Dexter, all that sort of stuff. Really fell in love with comics again through that, and through some of the Vertigo stuff, which was Warren Ellis era, Hellblazer. Unfortunately, some of the lesser Sandman spin-offs. I mean, there really haven't been many greater Sandman spin-offs. They've all been lesser Sandman spin-offs, except for Lucifer. I got the original Lucifer miniseries, a couple other things like that. And I was like, comics are actually comics are good. I should read more comics. And then I started reading more comics and fell in with a bunch of people in the wrong bar and started writing comics. I've been broke ever.
Yeah, well, if it got you doing this, then really it's the right bar, I would say. Okay, so from that, you start writing comics, you start collaborating, you start building a name for yourself and, living an entire life. How did you then sort of come back into the orbit of 2000 AD, as a creator?
I'm really bad at pitching work for hire. I just don't. So anytime you see me doing work for hire, that's because an editor reached out to me and I'm like, this editor is a good person and I respect what they do. And I'm interested enough in this to put aside the time for it. Because honestly, if I'm going to work, no work for hire pays very well. And if I'm going to work for cheap, I'm going to work for cheap for myself with something I own. And so that's how Archie versus Predator came about. My then editor at Dark Horse reached out to me for that. And 2000 AD happened because Arthur Wyatt, a longtime 2000 AD writer, who lives in the Pacific Northwest now, reached out to me and said, "Hey, they're doing a couple movieverse Dread stories. They asked me to do it. I'm feeling a wee bit burned out. Do you want to collaborate on something?" And so we did. We had the best time. Worked with Henry Flint, who's now working with Arthur and Rob Williams on the sort of defund the police, all judges are bastards arc in the Prog now, which is like an all-timer. It's going to be another classic, like Origins or America. It's up there.
It's so good. Yeah.
It's so good. And Henry's art, Henry was always a great artist. I mean, his fine art is like his painting he does is also wonderful. Very abstract. I keep meaning to buy one. But he changed his style from a more expressionistic style to a more how do I put it, representational, yet still very graphically stunning style for this current Prog arc. And it's been wonderful. So but short story is, Art reached out to me, said, "Do you want to do something together?" We had some fun doing Dread. I then did a solo Dread Christmas strip where I got Dread to arrest Santa Claus, because that's the sort of person I am. I did a Dread movieverse one. I did the final Dread movieverse arc. And then, I enjoyed working for 2000 AD. I have a reputation as a rebel, but I'm actually very easy to work with. I finish the entire script for the entire arc in advance. I send it to the editor and the artist. Everything is spelled correctly. There's only one of each page. The story works. There aren't any plot holes or major errors. And of course, sometimes people come back and say, "Can you change this to that?" And I'm happy to do that. But yeah, I'm a reasonably painless creator to employ on that sort of thing. And so every so often Tharg reaches out and says, "Do you want to do a thing?" And I'm like, "Sure." And then Full Tilt Boogie came about because Ed, who I'd worked with on a humanoid series, the first time humanoids were employing American creators. I think we're now on the third version of that. Ed's wonderful. He's a truly tremendous artist, real flair for very detailed sci-fi escapes, which is something that does really well for 2000 AD. In 2000 AD, you got to be able to draw backgrounds, and you got to be able to draw really detailed backgrounds, because you've got Mega City 1, you've got spaceships, you've got you're never going to be able to slough off and not draw backgrounds. Though saying that, I did a Dread battle action crossover with John McCrae that was set basically in Dead World. And I sent John this email going, "Okay, John, I'm sending you a 2000 AD script that requires almost zero backgrounds. and you get to draw some really gross monsters. And he's like, I love you. This is the best 2000 AD script I've ever had in my life. And he knocks it out of the park, of course. But that was a rarity. Maybe if you're doing Dead World, you don't have to draw backgrounds, but in general, you have to draw a lot of backgrounds in 2000 AD. And Thorg called me up and said, well, emailed me, and said, we're doing this 2000 AD all ages special. You wouldn't happen to have something that would work for all ages, would you? And I had this pitch lying around with Ed that we never quite gotten off the ground or found the right publisher for, because all ages genre stuff is a weird little mix. It doesn't go to the YA middle grade bookstore publishers. And then the monthly publishers aren't quite sure what to do with it. So I had this pitch, redid it a little bit to remove some of the blood and gore. The important thing about all ages is the main character is a teen, is a young person. Had that, sent it off, and Tharg said, this is great, we'll do that. And 2000 AD Regened was a really, like, 2000 AD, like, much more than a lot of other publishers, periodical publishers, makes a significant effort to try new things, be inclusive, do stuff, and see what works. And sometimes things work and sometimes things don't. And much like a lot of American periodical comics, the audience of 2000 AD is, primarily middle-aged, primarily white, have been reading it for a while, have expectations. And sometimes you can surprise those people, and sometimes they don't, they kind of push back. 2000 AD is always interested, because it's still a newsstand book in the US and the UK, in trying to reach out to new audiences and younger audiences, because that's how you keep a weekly book going. And like, the response to Regened was kind of a mixed bag. Out of Regened, though, the one story that seemed to have, like, pretty much near universal, everybody liked it, high point of the special, was Full Tilt Boogie. Don't know why that is, possibly because I was aiming it more as an homage to the kind of space operas I grew up on, which were all Japanese. So, like Star Blazers, Battle of the Planets, which is Gatchaman and Space Battle Cruiser Yamato, for those who did the other way around. Yeah. Star Blazers was Yamato, Battle of the Planets was Gatchaman, in terrible, terrible US redubs that were on Saturday morning TV when, network TV was a thing. And I wanted to bring that sort of comedy, like the way you could mix comedy, deep pathos, and peril, but like not bloody peril. Like, you can do a lot with emotional peril. I've always been a person who can, because I'm a character writer first and foremost, who can do a lot without having to show a lot, if you know what I mean. And I think you can, I think people either just totally soft pedal it for a lot of kid stuff. If you're going to do kid stuff badly, you either soft pedal it, or you may basically make it for adults with a lot of, like, obscure pop culture jokes. But they're kids, so, like, theoretically it's all ages. No, it's not. But you could, I could write something that was, it's genuinely funny in places. There's a lot of emotional heft to it. Serious things happen. But there's no swearing or blood or sex. And then Tharg said, this was great, do another. So I did a first arc. Then it took us a little while to get around to the second arc, because Ed was being employed on back-to-back books by the French in the Bay Day market, where he's very successful. And I had Maddie and True War to get out in the pandemic. And, like, I just, putting those books out in the middle of the pandemic nearly drove me insane. Mostly on the publisher stuff, because Z2 was, they were like, they just kind of expected me to hand them a finished book. And anytime I did raise my hand and be like, I could use a little bit of help here, they were like, we'll get back to you. So, by the time we got it finished, it's now 3 years later, and we're finally doing arc 2. I just finished writing the third and final arc. So hopefully that will follow on. Ed's going to start it next month. So hopefully that will follow on, like, not there won't be as long a gap.
Mhm.
I mean, I could write these characters forever, really. But we'll see.
Yeah, I reread the first book last night, and there is that balancing act that I think you pull off really well of there being real stakes, there being real emotions, there's the family dynamic. Can you talk about sort of putting T and her crew together? Like what were you trying to make sure was in the mix for your main characters?
Um, I was with T. I've always thought it's a bit of laziness when writers make their teen hero an orphan. It's like, oh, it's the easy way out. They don't have anything that can, any reason not to do things, because they don't have to be home for anybody. They're not taking care of anybody. They're not, there's no one that can be used against them in a way, except possibly a friend. And at that point, I was taking care of my own mother, who's much older and was eventually needed to go into a care home. So I wanted to have, rather than it just be a parent, a grandparent who's with her, who, and it's fun to put in characters who physically can't fight, or who aren't fighters. Again, it's a crass laziness to have a female character that is essentially does everything the boys do. The male hero is supposed to be very good at fighting and off he goes and stuff like that. And then having a female hero who is the equal to the male hero, but also has great boobs and does it all in heels and tight clothes. It's kind of like, come on, like, that's fine. Like, we all love Atomic Blonde. It's great. All the Charlize Theron, but even Charlize Theron gets tired of playing Charlize Theron characters and wants to go play something else. Like, she's like tired of doing the high kicky fighty smoochy role.
Yeah.
I think it's important to have characters who are heroic and extreme, and who the quest couldn't succeed without, who have different skills. Grandma feeds everybody. She's, there's a bit in part 2 that I think we've reached already where she gambles. And there's a whole bit around grandma kind of getting out of a difficult situation in a very grandma way, where she doesn't throw a punch, she doesn't do, doesn't have a weapon, just does grandma stuff. She's very, very useful at every point. She's not a passenger. She's very much kind of the emotional glue that keeps the group together. But she's not the fighting skill person. And that's fun. And it's important, I think. T's not really a super fighty person either. She's thrust into a situation that she really doesn't want to be in, and she's not completely sold on the idea of like pushing back against the situation, because it's essentially the whole empire is blaming her for accidentally restarting a 1,000-year-old war. Yeah, but also, like, is it really a war, or is the empire just looking for something to, is jumping to conclusions / looking to, turn itself away from like domestic issues by being like, those people are bad, let's go fight the bad people. And everyone goes, oh, okay, then we'll all buckle together and fight the bad people and ignore the fact that things aren't going so well domestically. That one goes back to Livy's history of early Rome in terms of great political tactics. It works too. Then they end up with, the reason they restart this 1,000-year-old war is when trying to rescue this very shallow, like, Instagram influencer style member of the royal family from debtor prison, where he got sent because he to learn his damn lesson. They end up crash landing on a distant moon where there is still, a semi-functional ship from this war a millennia ago that's kind of dormant, and this wonderful kind of AI that's kind of gotten mold on its circuits and is a little like Lulu itself. Not that AI needs any help to be Lulu, as we've now learned since. This was all pre ChatGPT that was written, and named Horus. And they have the black dog, who's a kind of Hanubite warrior / assassin who played a significant role in the previous war. And what do you do when you're a hive mind assassin that the hive mind voice stopped a millennia ago, and now you have to have independent thought and figure out what to do, so it's also about a character who's essentially done exactly what they've been told to do their entire lives, and their purpose was to do exactly what they were told to do, now having a slow self-actualization about what that they can have wants and needs.
Yeah. One of the other things I really liked, I guess, is sort of a theme. I mean, maybe jumped out.
Oh, sorry. And there's also a ship's cat, because like every ship needs a cat.
Yes, a very special cat.
Yep.
Oh, that cat.
Whose backstory we will never tell. Like the cat is special.
Yeah.
I know how the cat got on the ship, but other than that, the cat is just cat.
Cool. The theme of trying to find your place in the galaxy, and but I feel like for young adult, or for characters at sort of this age, I guess we're all sort of trying to find our place, but they are sort of discovering what the structure of kind of this world is and where they're supposed to go, and then realizing, oh no, that's not what I wanted it to be, or I'm actually going in this direction. So it's an extra, I'm not really saying this very well, but like it's an extra wrinkle to these sort of stories that I think you do very well in the first book in multiple characters. So it's not like everybody's going on the adventure and here's the one character who's having her arc. You get to see, like, among the knights, they have their own arcs, and they're jostling for sort of finding out where they kind of are, and things change, and it's not just navigating the adult world, but you're trying to do sort of multiple things at once, I guess, at that age. Figure out who you are, and then
where you belong.
Right. I mean, I didn't think about this at the time, but looking back on it, it felt like that was something really tough to do while making it invisible.
Yes. Every character, there are a lot of characters. When I was doing the third and final arc, I'm like, Chris's, I have to, like, all of these characters have to have an end to their arc, and they do. They all get good ends, even ones that may not deserve it. It's it is very quiet behind the scenes work to give them all their own motivations and directions, and but I think there's also something universal about, as a young person, finding out that the world of adults is kind of full of shit. And that's super what the Knights, which is kind of like a little mini Super Sentai team, like, again, my Gachimon homage, who get picked out to like lead the charge and represent the best of the Luxine Empire as they fight the Anabite menace. And it's like theoretically a great thing to be part of this. But then they're figureheads, they're controlled figureheads who are now who don't have who think they're coming into a situation of leadership where they will have a lot of power, and they actually find in becoming a knight they end up having far less power, and they react to that in a lot of ways. Some of them rebel against it. Some of them figure if they're just a very, very, very good boy, they will be allowed to be the specialist boy. And some of them are just kind of like, well, this is actually fine. I didn't have a lot of power in my life before then. Don't really have a lot of power now, but like I got food and like everything's cool. So there are 5 different Luxine Knights, and they all have very, very different reactions. And they come back in the second arc, and they also come back in the third arc in a big way. So we find out what happens to all of them. And yeah, it was subtle, especially when you think that the story, especially in the first arc, is serialized out in 5 to 6 page increments. You don't have a lot of room. But there's a great art to writing those 2000 AD stories to make each segment feel like the most satisfying it can, and creating an illusion of space within what is a very, very dense amount of pages. Like, I think there's double page spread I'm really proud of, in probably in each of the major arcs. There's at least one really good double page spread where we're just like, spaceships, they're cool. But it's important because it gives you a little moment within the story to be like, to really, because it's, it's like plot, story. And it gives you a moment to just sort of rock back and kind of soak in the world. It's important to let people soak into the world when you're doing sci-fi, because that's what they're there for.
And Eduardo does it so well. Like, you want to see him do the
like if I give him
the big shots.
6 panels of like talking heads and kids having angst, I want to be able to give him a page of just like drawing pretty things. Because there's a lot of like nuts and bolts, meat and potatoes panels about kids having angst.
That is actually my, not necessarily teen angst panelized, but the trick of writing in such a condensed form was actually my next question. How do you think the story would have been different if you and Eduardo had 64 pages in one chunk to use, rather than having to split it up into 5 or 10 or 12 installments of the smaller chunks?
I mean, I wrote each arc in one go. So the first arc was delivered as one script with, episode 1, episode 2, blah, blah. Second arc, same. Third arc, same. So the story tends to hang together very well in trade because it was written, from left to right, essentially, and like in one go. So I could, and one of the reasons I do that is I do spend a lot of time writing thriller and suspense into it. I mean, I joke there's a lot of teen angst, but like there's a lot of thriller and suspense, and I think that's why it plays so well with the traditional 2000 AD fan base. Is I'm always flipping out unexpected suspense cards. I remember when I was writing the third arc, the most recent arc, the third arc, the one that's no one's going to see for a few months. I was like in the middle of episode 6 and I was like, oh man, I need to go back and change something in episode 2 to make this work better. And that's one of the reasons I do that. And I also famously write the entire graphic novel before giving it to the artist. That happens because I guarantee that I will be 2/3 of the way through the book and go, oh shit, if I go back and fix this thing or like change this thing a little bit, it's going to work so much better. And yeah, I mean, I think, especially in the third arc where I was kind of limited in the number of episodes, I would have let a few more things breathe. There would have been a little bit more soaking in it. There would have been in the atmosphere. There would have been a little more space around some of the emotional moments where I had to, kind of compress them a little bit. I don't think we lost anything by putting it into the 5-page chunks. I mean, I was really cutting between scenes very quickly. Sometimes we were in 3 different scenes in one 5-page story, but that's my own goddamn fault for having like 8 main characters, all of whose arcs need to be touched back on so that you can, so that when they show up 2 episodes later, you're not like, who the fuck is this? But yeah, I think there would have been a few emotional moments with a little more space. There's one particular arc at the end in the third arc. One couple of characters that I would have liked 2 more pages to kind of let them have their final moments, kind of thing.
But like when I was revisiting it, the first book last night, I know how long, generally a Prog installment is. I couldn't see the seams, I guess is a way to put it. I was like, okay, it feels like this is probably where there was a Prog break. There's probably where there was a Prog break, but it didn't read like usual sort of trade collections of stories where you have that sort of falling action, and then the next thing is like the rising action, and then the falling of those things tended to go with where they would have in like an overall story, as opposed to installment. So
good, that's what we were trying to do.
Well,
I mean, I wanted to,
it accomplished.
Yes, it has to read well both in the Prog. So when you do read it in the Prog, I don't know if you had how much of issue 2 arc 2 they sent you to read. But if you read it in the prog, it has to have that oh shit moment at the end, and then it has to, and then the beginning you have to be able to almost like reset it up enough so the reader coming in who doesn't necessarily remember exactly what happened last week, you mentioned the names, like there's a tiny bit of non-repetitive exposition that happens so that the reader knows what's going on. But I think it really did help have, also for Eduardo, because rather than getting a PDF, like a Word doc that's episode 1 and a Word doc that's episode 2, and he has to switch between them, he just has to kind of scroll up to be like, oh wait, what did we do last time? And where is this coming in? Yeah. We try to reuse locations as well, which also kind of helps.
One of the things, like obviously, Eduardo's art is fantastic. One of the things I really enjoyed about it, textural quality to it, almost like washy in a way. Since he's not here to sort of talk about it, can you sort of talk about his process a little bit, and maybe how he works with Ava as the colorist?
I think Ava's his usual colorist. I'd wanted us. I love texture in colors. If anything, we have a little less texture in the second arc than in the first. I would have liked to see more. But the one thing about the 2000 AD process or the essentially work for hire project process is I'm less involved at stages of it, and and other people take care of that. That's very useful in some ways, but also in other ways, like I see pages at the pencil stage and give Ed any notes I have in that. I mean, his English is really great and stuff like that, but sometimes, like every so often, I'll be like, oh, well, actually, I meant this, or oh, I guess I didn't script that bit very well. What if we do this instead? Or like, this is the expression I need on this character. Maybe once every couple episodes. Like, Ed's pretty much flawless. And then I see the inks, and then that's all I see. And then I turn in a lettering script once, and I go back over the art from the inks and make sure that the letters fit the page, and I don't have redundant letters, or if there's sound effects that are necessitated by the art, or additional dialogue necessitated because we did something different than the script said, then I fix that, and then it's off. Like if it had been my project, there would have been, if I'd been overseeing it from top to toe, there would have been more texture in the current arc, in the colors, and I would have used a lowercase lettering font rather than an uppercase, because I think kids are used to reading lowercase from manga. So if you're aiming something at kids and teens, lowercase, mixed case is also a little bit better for reluctant readers and folks with any visual processing disorders than all caps case. So I tend to skew towards that in pretty much all my graphic novel work.
Man, so many places to go from here. Yeah, so you mentioned that you don't really work for hire too much, that you are very much a self-starter in your in your creative in your graphic novels and such. And you are one of the first examples of people that I think of when people mention comic writers as sort of showrunners for their projects. Does that type of logistical or organizational mentality to be able to sort of wear many hats to get something kind of out the door, does that come easy to you?
Yeah, it does. Like, well, I mean, it's never easy. But I had to learn early on how to letter because I couldn't afford a letterer, and I couldn't really afford an external editor to get my work off the ground. And then I just kept on doing it that way. I've got a graphic novel that's either going to come out through Dark Horse or Image, I'm not sure which, a YA graphic novel that I'm actually having Hassan letter, because his lettering style is close to mine. And it got to a point where, like, if I have to, I lettered all of Bad Karma last year, all of Parasocial, which was enough, and then Scrapper happened, and I love Scrapper, but that was like, that kind of put me into the red zone in terms of the amount of work I could handle in a year, because I'm a single parent. I also have a day job, because I need healthcare and regular pay, and comics provides neither of those.
Right.
And I just, like, it was too much. It was just too much. And so, my editor kept going, when are you going to get this other book to me? And I'm like, I like, it will literally break my brain. I am very near burnout. And I'm like, I can just hire someone to letter. I'm like, oh. So I did that, and I'm actually checking the lettering script over this weekend and handing it off to him. And I'm quite excited by that. Maybe there will be a future where I letter fewer of my books. I will probably always keep lettering the books with Erica, though, because Erica Henderson and I, for Parasocial and Dracula Motherfucker, we just like to do design stuff, and the lettering process actually comes quite early onto her color roughs. And I don't think, like, it's too much fun to work with Erica to give that up. So we'll see. But yeah, I don't know whether I truly find it easy, or I'm just so used to it and I've done it so many times. It helps also a lot that my books are graphic novels and not monthlies. Monthlies, like making one 24-page comic book, pretty easy actually. Making one every month, really hard, like really stressful. All it takes, and if you've got a bunch of people working on it, like, colorist, line artist, letter, like, one person falls out of whack, the whole thing comes down, and then everybody else has to adjust. And me being the letterer as well as the writer, that means, if anyone's going to get squished at the end, it's going to be me again. And so the thing about graphic novels, and the thing about being, mid-career, having a lot of books out, not really worrying that anyone's going to forget me, if I don't have everything on the stands right now, is we can just spend 4 years making a book, like, quietly around other things. It's fine. Like, the script is done. I can then pivot to supporting the artist and getting them anything they need. So I think it's very much that transference of, like, I finish the writing job, then I can do the other job.
Not to put letterers out of work, but do you recommend taking a shot at sort of do you think what you can learn from that experience is important for a comics writer specifically to have in their toolbox?
Yeah, absolutely. I think artists should letter their own work too. And most artists do, but I have worked with some superhero artists who have never lettered their own work, and I'm like, where, like, that close up, like, where am I going to put the letters? Like, on their forehead? And they're like, oh. I mean, I'd almost always prefer to work with an artist who's put out their own work and lettered it than someone who hasn't. Because they'll leave space, they'll understand what they're doing, they may even draw balloons in or put in the sound effects themselves. But yeah, it's absolutely critical that you letter a few books yourself, because you'll learn intimately how much dialogue fits in a panel, when you need sound effects, how you can use them in a graphically interesting way, rather than as, like, ugly uninvited guests squat on top of the art in, like, horrible gradient patterns. Yeah, it's crucial. It's really crucial, because you also get better at writing scripts. And dumb little things like, okay, here's where I have to have the info dump. We're going to do this as a straight close up, leave a lot of headroom, look at all the dialogue. I'm sorry. Boom. And then you'll find that you edit yourself as you letter, which helps. Sometimes you delete dialogue because the art handles it, or you overwrote. The you of 6 months ago was on one and, like, maybe not having their best day. Sometimes you add dialogue when something in an art moment isn't quite as clear from a story point of view as you need it to be, because where you have enough experience to know when readers get lost. Sometimes you put in a sound effect to highlight something in the art. The example I always use is someone picking up some keys. You get a drawing of someone down to about their mid thigh. They're picking up keys off a table near the door. You may not see that. They're saying something over their shoulder. Like, you might not actually see the keys be picked up. And so you put a little sound effect like TK next to the keys to make the sound of the keys going clink as you pick them up. And then because of the way humans read comics, the eye will go from that word balloon of the person saying what they're saying down to the next, thing that reads as words, the sound effect. And then you'll specifically look at that place.
Yeah, you help guide it's another way to help guide the reader through the work.
And I think a lot about like the balloon arrangement guiding the reader through the page. There's a great double page spread in the second issue of Scrapper where we have like, it's just kind of this one meandering conversation through some tunnels, and it is absolutely cued by the direction of the balloons. It would be very, very hard to parse otherwise.
Another thing I like about your work, about your career, are your titles. I mean, Dracula Motherfucker is just up there. I also have a particular fondness for Semi-Auto Magic.
Yes. With Jerry Ordway.
And Jerry Ordway, not somebody who I would have pegged that you would work with, but I feel he is really underrated. Just in general, like everyone pegs him in like the Golden Age era, and he knocks that stuff out of the park. But Jerry, so good.
I know, and like people should hire Jerry Ordway to draw horror, to draw romance. Like he can literally do anything, and he is the nicest guy. Just like, I'm such a big Jerry Ordway fan, and he should be getting so much more work, because the range of his talent is so misunderstood.
Jerry Ordway. So what goes into a good title for you, and have you ever used a title and then later on realized it would have fit better with like a different project?
Title comes very early in the process. It has to be memorable. It has to have nothing else that I can easily find that has the same title. This is like a vastly underrated thing to do. Not enough people do it. When you're thinking of titling your project, go on to Amazon Books and Google it, and then just Google it in general in case there's something else, some movie. I remember someone doing a Kickstarter project called Infernal Affairs, and I'm like, mate, I hate to inform you. Like, and it was exactly what you thought it was. It was like a devil, like solving crimes,
Yeah.
It was like Dollar Store Lucifer or something. I don't know. And someone was retired like, mate, this is actually like a super, super famous movie. And like, what? It's Chinese. I'm like, all right. Like, okay. Like at that point, you're just like, okay, sure. Like may you have the day you deserve. I'm done. But yes, like, Bad Karma, there was a Bollywood film that wasn't super famous. So I'm like, I guess this is safe because we're not anywhere near it. Parasocial, I actually had publishers. I actually asked Image to put in a Publishers Weekly announcement or a Publishers Marketplace announcement about the book signing, so I could kind of squat on the title, because it was such an obvious title for a horror story, and I can't believe someone else used it. Someone else hadn't used it yet. Semi-Auto Magic was just a bad pun. Puns make good.
So good.
Dracula Motherfucker came out of me and Christopher Cooper, the artist Coop, just arsing around on Twitter. And he was like, that's such a good name, you should make a comic out of it. And I'm like, I should. The project with Tom Fowler has a good name. I can't reveal it yet.
Okay.
We're getting there. I put a lot of thought into the names. Like generally, I put a lot of thought into everything. Like Erica and I put a lot of thought into our book design to make it visible on the shelf, especially when Rack's spine out. That's why we do those hardbacks. I'm crushed the guys who did Enfield Gang Massacre, which is a great book, are doing a paperback. Like, why are they doing a paperback with that book? It's just going to disappear on shelves because it's like a 6-issue mini printed on newsprint. Like you can just ask Image and they have these amazing hardbacks that are cheaper than the paperbacks because they're printed in Shanghai. You have to be a little bit more advanced in terms of like getting it off to the printer. But, you know, they're such a nicer object on the bookstore shelf, and they don't like, you know, Parasocial costs less than the average Marvel 4-issue trade. It's $19.99. Or are we $16.99? It might be $18.99. I can't remember. We're like, you know, substantially under, like we're under $20 for a, you know, essentially a 160-page hardback.
So good. So
but the other
good.
fun thing about the hardback format, which I'm just so in love with, is that you get to do end papers, and we like end papers are just like a little bit of joy in the design department. Really fun to do.
Yeah, another little canvas for you to work with.
Well, to make it like a more special thing. Like I think, you know, a lot of people are happy with, I mean, I live in Manhattan, like you don't have to tell me about, you know, having too many books and no place to put them. You know, like I love it however people read our books, whether it's digitally, whether it's via library, whether they borrow from a friend, whatever. But I want to make the final, the physical object itself something that is both affordable to normal people and feels like a special item. That's really important to me.
How important to your creative work is having a non-creative or non-comics day job? Like putting aside, you know, the healthcare and all the other benefits of it, how important is it for you to maybe not do comics 24/7? Very.
It's probably my sanity. I mean, I love my job. I've got a great job. I can't say what it is because we have a very church and state division here. They know about my writing. Their compliance department knows about my writing. My direct superior is very supportive. I just keep my trap shut at work because, like, I don't want to be like feeling like I'm selling books to my colleagues. That's weird. You know, comics is like just an absolute clown show of an industry. I would not have a good life. You know, the idea of having to be nice to some truly mediocre editors to like beg for $70 a page, work for hire gigs on licensed crap I don't give a shit about. I mean, I can't do that. I'm repulsed by the concept of having to do that. You know, I'm lucky enough to work with great editors when they reach out to me every so often and they understand my circumstances where I'm like, I'm not, you know, I'm going to write the whole script in advance. And then once we've got 3 issues in the bag, then you can solicit it, you know. I really love, I'm in a fortunate position because of the day job where not only do I have experiences and meet people beyond the comic book industry, which is very important for the creative process of just like encountering different things and different people. You know, I'm also able to only work on projects that I really love and really believe in. And so, you know, while creating a book is often very frustrating from, you know, issues like, you know, just not having time to writer's block to waiting on art to like occasionally having to find a different artist if someone gets busy or, you know, a lot of little frustrations, but overall, like you know, the whole creative act for me, is just one of joy. And I think that's wonderful. Like I've always believed that, you know, publishing is a very transient occupation. And I write every book as if it could be my last, because it very well could be. You know, Image decides they don't want to publish me anymore. Where am I going to go? Like Kickstart? Maybe Dark Horse? You know, my anyone's position in the comic book industry is extremely tenuous. And I want to make sure that every book I create, if it was the last book I put out there, if someone came to me 10 years from now and said, oh, would you mind signing this book? I'd be thrilled too. Wouldn't be that little internal wince of, oh, I remember when I did that for money and the editor totally fucked it up.
Mm-hmm. How do you think being a parent has changed how you write, or what type of stories you tell now versus before?
A bunch of different ways. I mean, being a parent has made me a better person. Mm-hmm. Also, watching my daughter grow up and what she read and what she became interested in was just a really fascinating process. Mm-hmm. And, we still share books. We'll watch an anime series together. She'll find something she wants me to watch. I'll find, she brought, she's really into Jujutsu Kaisen at the moment. So we were watching that. I made her watch a little bit of the Pluto anime and she's like, Mom, why is this so sad? And I'm like, welcome to Neo Kurosawa. She got 2 episodes into it to like the North 9 death and was like, I can't watch this anymore because I'm sad about the military robot bug creature dying. Spoiler, sorry.
That's been out for a while. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's only the 2nd episode. It's been funny because it's informed a lot of the way I write for all ages too. Mm-hmm. And why I lean more into the manga side. I mean, you go into she got a book token from her grandparents, so we went into the Barnes and Noble in Union Square. 4 aisles on the top floor of graphic novels, 3 aisles back in front of them manga. Actually, 4 aisles. One side of one aisle, graphic novels. We're doing it wrong. Like, there's no argument here. We're just doing it wrong. And while the manga industry itself has tremendous problems on its own in terms of working conditions and pace of work, we've seen a little bit of that with webtoons where, all these webtoon creators burning out because they have to like churn out episodes every week. That's exactly how manga is. Of course, the manga artists are paid for their pages and the webtoons artists are generally like not. Mm-hmm. So there's that. But I'm not saying we should recreate the manga industry here because comics does not need more shitty working conditions. We have enough homegrown. Like,
we're full.
We have shitty working conditions at home. Damn it.
Yeah.
One black coffee.
But there are things we can learn from that and adapt to our own situation.
Exactly. And the part of that is the kids are not getting into superheroes because there's no way in. And the books don't appeal to them, but there are obviously superhero type Japanese titles like My Hero Academia and stuff like that. That the best New Mutants graphic novel ever created. But the ease of you start at volume 1, it's a nice little book to hold in your hand. Doesn't get damaged in the school backpack the way a floppy would. A whole like satisfying chunk of story. A lot of that is why I pivoted to graphic novels as well, because I just, I want one satisfying chunk of story that when it's racked spine out in a bookstore will still be appealing because it's thick enough and has a nice big title on it. And it was fun to see what she got into and what she didn't. It's just, some things I thought that she would absolutely love. She's been like, nah. And some things that I'm surprised by. She got super into.
As we're on the home stretch here, I think it's easy to listen to you talk and to hear you and sort of understand you're not somebody that suffers fools gladly.
Sorry, one last thing about my daughter. She's also proofreading. She proofs my scripts. She proofs my stories. Like, she'll act as a sounding board, and I'll be like, what do you think of this? Or like, do you want to look at a few of these pages and tell me what you think? Mm-hmm. And if she's like, I hate it, then like I'm not like gonna junk the project because my kid hates it. It might just not be for her, but it's fun to see I almost more focus on the positive side, like what aspects of the story excite her. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of file that away.
I'm assuming she's all on board with Tilt Boogie.
Yes. And the sort of middle grade book I'm doing with Carla Speed McNeil extremely slowly.
Okay.
Yeah. One of the things, the one comic that you kind of might not expect her to be super into was when she was about 9. I got her the giant Jack Kirby Commandi like collection. Like it was like a $15 like discounted hardback. And it's like, it's like 300, 400 pages. It's all of it. And she just ate through that in like 2 days.
Ooh.
Yeah, like, and
Yeah.
I pitched a sort of a YA middle grade Commandi to DC Inc. when that was around. But that was also when they were only hiring like famous YA prose writers.
Mm.
I mean, heaven forbid they hire someone who knew how to write comics.
Yeah. slow down now. Let's not, let's not get too hasty. Yeah. Thank you for making sure that was added to the conversation. If somebody tells you no about something, or like that won't work, or this isn't how things are done, is that the best motivator for you? Like just trying to be like, oh no, I can do that. Like I can just sort of prove that.
I mean,
prove them wrong.
Spite is a wonderful motivator, and I've used it often.
I'm sorry. That is actually, I didn't mention that, but that is the first part of the question. How important of a motivator is spite in your work? So to hear you say that, I'm like,
I'm
okay.
7 out of 10. Yeah, but again, I go back to the carnival of fools that is the comic industry as a whole. And that listening to people in the comic industry say things is not something that I would recommend for a satisfying life. So, like I'm on social media a lot. I have, 75% of the comics industry on mute because they're annoying. And I don't care. And increasingly, it's just like, it's not about other people saying no to me. It's about just me saying yes to things. Like my books are regularly like bestsellers in comic book shops. They get very good critical reception. I'm sure saying that, I've just cursed myself and my next book's going to be an absolute flop, but like, everyone has to have one. But also some of my books are just not for some readers, and that's fine. Like, it's okay if people don't like my books. There are lots of other books. They can go buy them. They can go be happy. I write what makes me happy. And it comes back to that wonderful Rick Rubin quote about like the audience comes last. You can't give the audience what you think they want, because then you're writing for someone else who you really don't understand. And when they don't like it, you haven't written what you want. And they've rejected what you think they wanted. So you just had a miserable experience.
Yeah. Everybody loses.
And, yeah. And everybody loses. And I don't write to be popular. I would, if I did require being popular, I'd probably try to write Spider-Man or something like that, because that's the easiest, or Nightwing, or one of those characters. I write because I have something to say, and there's a story that interests me, and I do it. And then people either like it or they don't. Enough people generally like it that I'm able to then write another book. And enough of my peers like my work that I'm generally able to work with some really interesting artists, and they self-selected it. Like there are a bunch of artists who never want to work with me. I mean, people crying in cars. Like, can you imagine having to draw that? That would suck. Someone cries in a car in like every one of my books. It's kind of a joke. But like, to be arsing around on, the hell site formerly known as Twitter, and joke around about a medieval book, the heist book that I wanted to do, and have Tom Fowler pop up in my mentions and go, "I'd draw that." And I'm like, shit, I have to write this now.
Yeah. Tom Fowler, there's an underappreciated.
Yeah, he's so good.
So good.
Yeah, see, so that's how it happens. And I'm, I don't think I'll ever leave comics. There's always someone else I want to work with, just to play around, experiment. I'm speaking to Marco Rudy over the weekend. Like, his style and my style are like really wildly clashing, because I'm so deliberate and he's so expressive. But I'm wondering if we can't find a way to like make that work, either just force, not to force him into something more deliberate, because why would you do that to an artist? But to maybe force me to be more expressive and looser. So that's how I look at my work. It's not, you know, what the haters think of me, or what, you know, or what people at work for hire companies think of me. Like it just doesn't, and like it's not part of my world at all. Like I don't see it. I don't care, you know. I have a wonderful time making the books that I want to make. Enough people buy them and I can make another book. That's fine. That's it. That's all there is.
Yeah. Well, we are all lucky that one of the places you want to make those books is with Tharg, of course, at 2000 AD. Full Tilt Boogie Book 2 is running in the Progs right now. If you're in North America and don't want to wait for the monthly packs, you can always find them day and date digitally at the 2000 AD web store. Can you tease anything about Book 2?
I'm not sure where we are in the actual serialization. Again, the problem when you write the whole script in advance, and
yeah,
a couple of years ago. Golly,
if not, that's no, you know, it's no problem. I think we've.
I mean, I think we have the cover next month, next issue, which is pretty cool. You know, I mean, 2008, Full Tilt Boogie is really about you know, a young teenager who essentially participates in the galactic gig economy, never quite earning enough money to pay off all her costs, acting as a bounty hunter / delivery person / girl of odd jobs with her spaceship and her grandma and her cat. And she gradually accumulates. She accidentally restarts a 1,000-year-old war and gradually accumulates like more people who are depending on her. All the while, all she really wants to do is just like get paid and go to a beach, pay off her bills and go hang out at the beach. She does not get to do any of these things at any point. And I think one of the reasons I really love Arc 2 is there's an extremely spooky spaceship as haunted house arc in it, which I think we're in the middle of right now. And it is, for me, it is extremely anxiety inducing and truly scary, but completely appropriate for an all ages book. You know, it's you can take, and I think it's important to scare kids. Kids like to be scared. I mean, if you don't give them stories that will scare them, they will make up their own stories that scare them. Like, you know, every second, third grader will come home from the playground going, "Who's Slender Man? Who's Momo?" And you have to explain to them about, you know, how about creating tangible horrors to let them feel the cathartic fear that they can't feel over intangible horrors.
Yeah. It's so good, so good. Anything else you wanna plug while we've
I mean, I've had a bunch of the Scrapper trade, which is my post-apocalyptic animal adventure story. We were there first, before the trend. We were the trend, as always. With Gears of War creator Cliff Lazinski, that comes out, and artist Ryan Kelly and Jordi Belair. That comes out in hardback on April 24th. Lovely 200-page hardback trade with wrap art, new cover. I also already have out Parasocial, which was Erica and my second horror collaboration after Dracula Motherfer Keer. It plays as a social media era misery, but has a couple of twists at the end that you absolutely will not see coming. And in many ways is a little bit deeper than misery. Sorry, Stephen. And
it's so good. It's so good.
And also there is Bad Karma, which is the collected edition of my Panel Syndicate webcomic. I've got a lot of free comics on Panel Syndicate, so if you go there, you can read Bad Karma, you can read Mayday, you can read Mayday's sequel, Brandenburg, which is a 70s spy noir, all for free. Pay for what you want. Have something free, with our love. And Bad Karma is a if you like things like, if you are the sort of person who would argue with it either ironically or non-ironically that Die Hard is the best Christmas movie ever, you should absolutely pick up Bad Karma because it's 100% up your alley. To former mercenaries, now disabled veterans, learn that someone that someone is on death row for a job they did, and having really nothing else going on in their lives, decide to go and, like, you know, try to get this guy off death row because he's completely innocent and they know it because they did it, and everything goes wrong. and it's very funny and full of action.
So
and
much.
there's another great female hero in that, and that is Cheryl, the ex-wife. Because again, Ethan in any other book would have had a dead wife and kids motivating his love of bottom shelf whiskey and depression. Here, now she left him. She just left him because, like, why would you live with Ethan? Ethan's a terrible person. He gets better, but you kind of love him because he's terrible. And so Cheryl ends up coming along on the ride. And Cheryl is like, they're all from South Boston. Cheryl is a loud, angry South Boston ex-wife who, like, again, you could tell she ran Ethan's life when they were married. And she has to come back to run Ethan's life because Ethan can't run his own life. So, again, Cheryl, she throws a punch at some point, but like, she's not the fighty character. But without her, they could not do what they did. She's absolutely critical. Like the story doesn't work. If you remove Cheryl, they would fail.
Sounds great. So you mentioned you're on Twitter. I'm trying to think where the best place for people to be able to follow you is. I guess it would be Twitter.
Blue Sky or Instagram. Ooh. I don't post a ton on Instagram, but like, if you need to ask me something, you can ask it on Instagram. Be polite. Blue Sky, I'm there much more often than Twitter. I still have plenty of friends on Twitter who haven't come across, so I check in there fairly frequently, every couple days. But yeah, I'm Alex de Campi everywhere.
Okay, cool. At least there's some brand synergy there, so people can follow you, because it's a very wide range and diverse range of books that you put out. So it's a little more work on our end as an audience to follow you, but it's absolutely worth it. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today about all this.
No problem. It's been a blast. Thank you.